Gather round, grimdarkers, fill your mugs, stoke the hearth, and listen well. I've tales aplenty of the long memory of the dwarves. Tales carved in stone, etched in runes, and grumbled over more ales than anyone can rightly count. So sit ye down, let your old mate the barbarian librarian, and my trusted hellhound Tobias, so handsome, tell you the saga of the Dawi. Our tale begins with the Ancestor Gods, Grungni, Grimnir and Valea. They walked amongst us in the early days, teaching the dwarves craft, courage and hearth. From them they learned how to hew mountains, forge steel and protect their kin. The first great halls rose in those days, delved deep into the bones of the world. It was a time of plenty, when every strike of the pick uncovered wonders. Their holds glittered like gems across the world's edge mountains, and their forges blazed without rest. It is said that no blade was sharper, no armour stronger than that wrought by dwarven hands. For a while, the world itself seemed at peace. The peace was shattered when the world was split asunder in fire and madness. The coming of chaos turned the earth and sky, rendering the very mountains. Winds of sorcery, wild and many-coloured, howled across the lands, yet the Dawi were not caught unawares, for the ancestor god Grungni had warned that such doom might come, and bade his folk to seek refuge deep beneath the stone. There they sheltered. When at last the tempest passed, they emerged to find a world changed forever. The air was fouled with the dust of warpstone, beasts roamed twisted and savage, and worst of all, demons stalked the mountains. Their hosts assailed the dwarven holds with murderous fury. But the ancestor gods gave the dwarves the tools to save their people. Grungni taught craft of runes, carving power into steel so axes and mail might stand against such horrors. Valea wove her wards round to their empire, blunting the black magics of their foes. And at the forefront strode Grimnir, the war god incarnate, clad in armour, harder than mountains, and wielding twin axes blazing with fury. With Grimnir leading the throngs, they drove the demons back, clearing the world's edge mountains of their filth. For a time. It was then in that age of storm that the Dawi first met the elves. A fleet led by Kalador Dragon Tamer, Mage and Prince, had been driven to our coasts after their own battle with chaos. He crossed paths with none other than Grimnir himself, who was pursuing the broken remnants of a demon host. What they thought of one another was never recorded, but when beastmen fell upon them both, the two joined arms, Grimnir's axes hewing, Kalador's spells blazing. The foe was slain, and so the first bond between the Dawi and the elves was forged. From Kalador, the dwarfs learned of Venarian, Phoenix King of Ulthuan, and his struggle to free that far isle from chaos. From Grimnir, Kalador heard of a storm from the north that had loosed demons upon the world. Kalador, wise in sorcery, spoke of a gate torn open in the far north, a wound in the world itself. Yet the respite was brief. Soon the skies blackened again, and demons surged in numbers too great even for Grimnir's fury. The holds were pressed hard, many falling beneath the tide. Grimnir, knowing the source, swore to march north and close the Chaos Gate itself. Gungi warned him it was his death, but Grimnir answered it was a death worth taking. He shaved his head, leaving only a single crest, and gave one axe to his son Morgrim. With Morgrim and a company of warriors he journeyed north, until only Grimnir pressed on into the poisoned wastes, a lone figure vanished into the haze. No Dawi ever saw him again. Some say he fell battling demons uncounted, others that he reached the gate itself and held it against the horde, while Kalador wrought his great vortex in Ulthuan. Some say he fights there still. Kalador's great spell at last drained the rampant magic from the world, pulling it into the great vortex. The demon host faded like smoke, vanishing from the gates of the dwarfs in an instant. The war was done. The ancestor gods themselves were gone too. Grungni, Valea, Grimnir, and the others vanished. Some say they returned to the heart of the mountains, waiting for the day their folk needed of them again. So dawned a new age for the Dawi. They rebuilt, prospered, and their halls rang with hammers once more. Yet of their kin who had wandered east towards the Mountains of Morn, or those who dwelt farther north, no word ever came. Now let me tell you of the greatest grudge ever carved. The alliance of elves and dwarves continued for an age. They traded, feasted, and fought side by side. But mistrust festered. This was known by the Witch King Malekith, cursed be his name, who stirred envy and suspicion between the two peoples. He whispered lies into elven ears, told them dwarves grew greedy, grasping, heavy-handed. Eventually the Witch King ordered dark elves dressed as high elves to attack dwarven caravans. Some dwarves retaliated on those they thought that wronged them. High King Gotrek Starbreaker, grim of brow but wise, still sought words before war. So he sent his advisor, Thorek Grimbuk, across the sea to Ulthuan, bearing hopes that old friendship with the elves might yet be mended. But when Thorek reached the Phoenix King's halls, the air was already heavy with suspicion. Kalador II, arrogant and sharp-tongued, accused the Dawi straight away. He spat when Thorek crossed the seas. The city of Khor-Vaneth in the Old World had been put to flame by none other than Prince Snorri Halfhand, son and heir to Gotrek himself. Thorek swore the dwarves knew nothing of this burning, nor did they give it leave. He laid down fair terms instead, that the elves should pay recompense for their slights, offer apology for their grievances piled against the Dawi, and swear that no further blood be shed. But Kalador II sneered. He said he answered not to demands but to pleas, and mocked that if the High King could not master his own king, what weight had his words. Then he gave the order, "Seize the ambassadors." Steel rang, the Dawi resisted, and one of their number was slain. Thorek and his companions were taken in chains. Kalador II gave a command that carved deeper than any blade. He ordered the beards of the dwarf envoys to be cut off. Mark it well, there is no deeper insult to the dwarven people, more than we could ever understand. So back they were sent, humiliated, bloodied and beardless, and with them went Kalador's final scorn, that if Gotrek Starbreaker sought payment, he should come take it with his own hands in Ulthuan. The War of the Beard had begun. Words turned to blades. The elves thought their sorcery would win the day, but the mountains teach patience, and steel remembers its purpose. The dwarven throngs marched from the holds, axes bright, banners snapping in the wind. Elf mages called fire from the skies, but the Dawi met it with rune-warded mail. For centuries it dragged on. Forests burned to ash, rivers ran red, and holds shook with thunder of cannon and bolt thrower. The elf hosts cut through with grace and guile, but every blow they dealt, the dwarves repaid thricefold. Neither side bent, and so both bled. Until the Battle of the Three Towers. After centuries of bloodletting, the hosts of Ulthuan and the Karaz Ankor faced one another in a final storm of ruin, and in the thick of that carnage strode two crowned foes who met in deadly hand-to-hand combat, King Gorik Starbreaker of the Dwarfs and High King of Karaz Ankor, and Kalador II, arrogant Phoenix King of the Elves. The field hushed when they met. Kalador struck first, quick as lightning, his blade a serpent's tongue of magical steel. Blow after blow, the Elf King raged, yet the dwarf did not yield an inch. At last, with a roar that shook the banners, Gotrek swung his runic hammer in a mighty arc. It smashed aside the Phoenix King's lunges and crushed the Elven King's magical armour. Both armies watched as the High King seized the Elf Monarch's Phoenix crown as a trophy and returned it to Karaz Ankor, where it remains to this day. The dwarves roared their triumph, but it was not joy, it was grim satisfaction, the settling of a debt, a grudge settled. The elves slunk back to Ulthuan, hearing that Malekith and his dark elves had invaded their homeland and no longer had the strength to fight two fronts, and sailed home, humbled and broken. There was no time for victory celebrations for the Dawi. The long war had left their empire and their people at the edge of ruin. They set back to their mountain halls, never to regain their former strength. Mark my words, even though settled, no pint, no age, no crown will ever see that grudge erased. To this day, when a Dawi sees a pointed ear, he feels the echo of that wall in his beard and bones. The Damaz Kron holds it still, writ larger than any other, The Elgi betrayed the Dawi, and the Dawi do not forgive. In ages long past, when the Dwarf Empire stood at its height, there was carved into the heart of the World Edge Mountains a hold of unrivaled splendour, Karak Eight Peaks. Beneath its 8 jagged summits, the halls and mines stretched deep, its courtyards grand, its forges busy, and its vaults heavy with the riches of stone and metal. Its walls above ground could daunt any foe, and its subterranean defences were the pride of Dawi engineering. But even the greatest fortress can have a hidden wound. From below the Skaven, cunning and patient schemed for centuries. Clans were assigned secret missions to burrow underneath the hold and into its long-neglected depths. Over a century they tunnelled, seeking hidden shafts, weak seams, and the waterworks of the city. As their plans matured, the surface world convulsed. Volcanoes to the south erupted, ash-blackened skies, crops failed, and famine and chaos spread among the surrounding lands. The dwarfs, seeking safety, retreated behind their ramparts, but in doing, they turned their backs on their outer lands, allowing the green-skinned hordes to press nearer. Thus the stage was set: starvation, isolation, and subterranean betrayal. First, Skaven forces struck through hidden tunnels and undermined the city's water supplies, contaminating wells with warpstone taint, while goblins and orcs rallied above. The Dawi fought back fiercely in the lower levels, deploying runes, traps, and ironbreakers, but the tide of enemies was enormous and cunning. Then the Skaven unleashed their deadliest trick, Poison Wind. Gas blaster filled tunnels with foul breath. Armour could not stop it. The defenders choked and fell as their lines broke. From the upper levels the greenskins stormed, orcs, goblins, night goblins, each crashing against stone walls, each wave heavier than the last. The dwarfs were squeezed from below and assaulted from above. The hold groaned, pillars cracked, corridors collapsed. When all was lost, the last dwarfs sealed the sacred shrines, took what treasures they could carry, and withdrew through secret passages. Karak Eight Peaks had fallen, its halls overrun, its stones defiled. A wound that would never heal, as the dwarfs to this day dream of taking back their ancient hold. After the loss of proud Karaks in the east, Karak Eight Peaks, Karak Azgul, Karak Drazug, the refugees founded new holds, Karak Norn and Karak Isa, rich in copper and iron if not the splendour of the Everpeak. As the forges blazed anew, trade routes reopened, linking these young strongholds with the old heartland, and in their wanderings the Dawi came across the scattered tribes of men. Fierce, strong-lived folk locked in endless war with the greenskins of the lowlands. In them the Dawi found common cause. High King Kurgan Ironbeard, travelling with an envoy bound for the Grey Mountains, was waylaid to a vast orc horde. The throng fought until the earth was piled high with corpses, but in the end the High King was taken captive. Fortune, or perhaps the Ancestor Gods, had set these lands in the domain of the unbreakable tribe, led by the warrior prince, Sigmar Heldenhammer. Sigmar and his warband fell upon the orcs with fury, yet the orc warlord was a monster clad in iron, wielding a flaming axe. Sigmar's bronze swords could not pierce him, and the lad near met his doom. In that dark hour, Kurgan Ironbeard broke free of his bonds and hurled his greatest treasure, the rune-forged hammer Galmaraz, the Skull Splitter, to Sigmar. The prince caught it, and with blows like thunder, he shattered the orc warlord's hand, and then his skull. When the battle was done, Sigmar sought to return the hammer, but Kurgan saw the truth with the dwarf's eye. The weapon had chosen its bearer. In Sigmar he beheld honour, strength and nobility fit for the ages, so the High King gifted Galmarez to the man. An act unheard of in all dwarven histories, and one that forged a brotherhood that endures still. With Galmarez in hand, Sigmar set about uniting the squabbling tribes of men, and not a moment too soon, for word came of an orc horde vast beyond reckoning was marching on Blackfire Pass. Sigmar silenced the bickering chiefs and bound them into one host to stand shoulder to shoulder with the Dawi. When the horde smashed through Kurgan's wall at the pass, Sigmar's army struck first, hammering the orcs back. Then from the flanks the Dawi charged, iron and steel biting deep. The slaughter was great, the crows fed for years, and the orcs broke. Sigmar himself smote Urgluk Bloodfang, shattering the Black Orc warlord's cleaver hand and then his skull. That victory was the salvation of both races. In gratitude, King Kurgan commanded the crafting of the 12 runefangs, mighty blades to be borne by the lords of men. A year later, crowned in Reichdorf with a diadem of gold and ivory, a Dawi gift, Sigmar Heldenhammer became the first emperor of man. Thus became an age of brotherhood, trade and war shared side by side. The Dawi marched with the Empire in 100 battles against orcs, ogres, vampires and worse. Dwarven engineers gifted the men black powder and steel, though never their deepest secrets, and the masons taught them to build stone that would not sag. They in turn gave the dwarf coin, grain and stout companions in battle. Aye, the dwarves grumble at the humans' short lives, their weak stomach for ale and their folly in chasing glory or listening to the whispers of chaos. But when true foes come, the sons of Sigmar stand fast, and the dwarves stand with them. For in the crucible of the Blackfire Pass, the oath was struck, sealed in blood, steel and stone, and by Grogny's beard it shall endure until the world's ending. Both races swore to eternally support when the other calls for aid, and a dwarf never breaks a promise. Through centuries, men and dwarf fought and died together, all the way to winning the great war against chaos and the defeat of the ever-chosen Azavar Kul. To this day, the dwarfs endure. The mountains are their bones, the tunnels their veins, and the strongholds their heart. Others see only cold rock and snow, the dwarfs see home. So there you have it, lads and lasses, the tale of the dwarven folk. From gods to grudges, from mountains to heroes, the dwarfs endure. Raise your mugs to them, to stone, to steel, to ale, and to the Dawi.